They truly had no idea, no clue who they were dealing with when they tried to play games with you. When the narcissist thought they could twist your thoughts, dim your spirit, and control your feelings, they genuinely believed their tricks were brilliant. They assumed you would stay confused, stay faithful, stay trapped in the web they wove with charm, deception, and false promises. They believed you were too empathetic, too trusting, too quick to forgive to ever see the reality behind their mask. But what they never understood is that every lie they told, every instance of emotional manipulation, every time they tried to change your reality, they were actually revealing who they were. Narcissists never grasp this. When you attempt to break someone who is genuine, someone who loves deeply, someone who gives without hidden motives, you don't just hurt them, you expose your own emptiness. You show the world the hollowness behind your smile, the cracks in your illusion. At first, they felt powerful. They thought they had you under their thumb. They believed they had won because you questioned yourself, because you stayed quiet, because you tried to fix what they kept breaking. But the thing about manipulating a good heart is simple. You don't walk away unaffected. You lose the very supply you relied on. You destroy the only person who ever saw you as more than just your ego. You survived their cycles, you endured the confusion, you walked through the emotional storms they created, but they stayed trapped in the same empty patterns, chasing the next person to drain, chasing the next life to feed their fragile ego. They thought you would stay defeated. They thought you would never realize your worth. They mistook your patience for weakness and your kindness for being blind. But you were never blind, just hopeful. You were never weak, just caring. You were never theirs to control. You were simply offering them a chance they never deserved. And now they watch you rise, not with anger, not seeking revenge, but with clarity, with strength, with a peace they will never know. You broke free and they stayed exactly where they've always been, behind the mask they can't live without. They see you rebuilding, rising, healing into someone they never imagined you could become because their view of you was always limited by their own ego. Narcissists can't see past themselves. They only saw you as a resource, a supply, something to exploit. But now they see what you were all along, irreplaceable, rare, deep, and genuine. They didn't just lose a person. They lost the one person who gave them the kind of love, loyalty, and emotional depth they will never experience again. And here is what haunts them. Now, they didn't manipulate someone ordinary. They tried to manipulate you, and that is the true source of their downfall. The harm narcissists cause doesn't stop when the moment ends. It echoes, it changes their own sense of self. At first, they suppress the truth. They tell themselves you were too sensitive, that you expected too much, that you misunderstood them. They invent whole stories to justify their cruelty. But those lies don't last forever. Reality creeps in the same way it always does, quietly, relentlessly. It whispers when they are alone, when the mask slips, when the room falls silent. It hits hardest when they see you succeeding, not in spite of them, but because you escaped them. What narcissists never grasp is that manipulation is a permanent trade. They traded your genuine nature for their ego, your loyalty for their insecurity, your trust for their temporary feeling of power. In doing so, they curse themselves with the very emptiness they tried to put onto you. You rebuild slowly but surely. They unravel quietly and inevitably. You didn't seek revenge. You didn't try to expose them. You didn't lower yourself to their level. You let life take care of the consequences, and life has a harsh way of settling scores. What they put out into the world, emotional manipulation, deception, emotional sabotage, comes back to them slowly, constantly, relentlessly. They end up living inside the very chaos they created. Their collapse is never loud at first. Narcissistic breakdown starts privately. Relationships begin to fail. People stop trusting them. Patterns repeat themselves. They become strangers to themselves because you cannot build a meaningful life on a base of selfishness and manipulation. And maybe they smile in public. Maybe they laugh louder than anyone else, but there's a hollowness behind it now, a realization, a shadow. They know what they did. They know what they lost. And there is no way back to what they destroyed. That is the consequence of being abused by a narcissist. Once they lose a truly loving soul, they never truly recover. But you weren't destroyed. You were changed. You carry wounds, yes, but they are reminders of your strength, your clarity, your awakening. You didn't fight back. You elevated yourself, and that ascent is the punishment they never saw coming. Let them live in the world they built. Let them drown in the silence that follows the departure of the one who once loved them with sincerity. Let them feel what happens when a narcissist loses someone they never deserved in the first place. Because their manipulation wasn't just a mistake. It was a revelation of who they truly are and a confirmation of who you were all along. And now, as you continue to grow with peace, with self-control, with unwavering self-worth, they watch from a distance that will never close. Narcissists always believe they can return whenever they want, but not this time, not with you. They had no idea that trying to control you would become the very thing that exposed them. But now they know. When a narcissist manipulates someone genuine, they don't just hurt that person. They destroy the last real connection they will ever have. They think it's just a moment, a small error, a tactic they can easily excuse. But emotional abuse isn't a single act. It's a crack in their own identity, and it spreads inside them, quietly harming everything they touch. Because you cannot manipulate someone else without betraying yourself. The inner mind knows, the conscience knows. Even if they bury it under arrogance, under excuses, under false confidence, it stays, it festers, it waits for the quiet moments when their mask drops. They told themselves they were right. They said you were overreacting, too emotional, too intense, too loving. But those are the stories narcissists use to run from the truth that they violated something important and will never get it back. There is always a cost, a very high one. And narcissists never understand that while they were busy trying to break you, they were slowly dismantling themselves. Manipulating someone who loved them wasn't a win. It was the start of their psychological breakdown. Life only has meaning when it's based on honesty, humility, and responsibility. Narcissists give up all of that. They trade integrity for ego. They trade connection for control. And the chaos they create eventually consumes them from the inside out. They distract themselves with noise, with people, with attention, with shallow approval. But late at night, when everything becomes quiet, reality appears. They remember your kindness, your patience, your loyalty. They remember how you cared when no one else did, how you gave what they never deserved, and then they remember what they did in return. That kind of guilt doesn't sleep. It sneaks into their new relationships. It poisons their ability to truly connect because deep down, they know who they were with you and what they are without you. They know they're capable of destroying the best thing they ever had. And that realization slowly, quietly, permanently eats away at them. You healed, you grew, you faced every wound they created and you rose above it. But narcissists, they remain prisoners of the very behavior they refuse to admit. Their conscience doesn't let them go. Their patterns don't let them grow. Their ego doesn't let them change. Something in them died the day they tried to control you. Something honest, something real, something human. And no amount of approval can bring back what their ego killed. That is the lasting price of narcissistic abuse. It's not only about what they did to you, it's about what they did to themselves. They broke their own character. They undermined their own identity. They convinced themselves that hurting someone kind is acceptable. And once you do that, you lose the ability to build anything truly meaningful. The deeper pain belongs to them. They know what they threw away. They know they chose selfishness. They know they lost someone who truly cared. And no matter how they twist the story, no matter who they blame, that inner voice never stops whispering, "You did this. You lost them. You will never get them back." So yes, you were hurt, you were wounded, but you healed with respect. You rose with clarity. They, on the other hand, are left standing in the wreckage of their own actions. They thought your kindness meant weakness. They thought your empathy meant surrender. They thought your patience meant dependence. They misunderstood everything. They thought your silence meant weakness. They thought your patience meant you were powerless. They believed you were too afraid to speak, too fragile to stand up, too easily fooled to see through their tricks. But what they never understood, and may still not fully grasp, is that you weren't weak. You were strong in ways their ego could never understand. Strength doesn't always roar. It doesn't need to explode in anger or strike back with vengeance. Real strength, the kind that is built on self-respect, self-control, and clarity, often appears calm, steady, and unshakable. And that was exactly what you had. A strength that didn't panic, that didn't waste words on someone who would never truly listen. They assumed you were easy to manipulate because you didn't react to every insult, didn't fight every slight, didn't beg for attention. You gave them space, not because you didn't see the warning signs, but because you hoped they might show character, that they might prove capable of honor. And that self-control, that grace, made you dangerous in the quietest, most dignified way. Your silence was never agreement. Your patience was never surrender. You were observing, listening, taking note, letting their true nature reveal itself. Time and again, they failed. And yet, you remained kind, not blind, not fooled, not weak, but unwilling to let their toxic behavior harden you. That takes real power. Not the power to destroy, but the power to remain whole, balanced, unshaken, even in the presence of someone skilled in manipulation. And when you finally walked away, when your silence became distance, they didn't know how to react. People who depend on control and emotional exploitation panic when their target finally disconnects. They're used to getting drama, feeding off a reaction, but you gave them none. You gave them space, and in that space, you let life do the work. The heavy weight of their own choices became theirs to carry, far heavier than any argument, confrontation, or reason could ever be. They underestimated the impact of your silence, not the silence of simply not caring, but the silence of someone who has seen the truth, accepted it, and chosen to protect themselves. That kind of silence is final. It is calm, controlled, and definite. It's the storm settling inside you, the realization that self-respect and dignity matter far more than trying to prove a point. Anyone can yell when they're hurt, anyone can lash out in anger, but it takes an entirely different kind of strength to feel everything. The betrayal, the manipulation, the gaslighting, and still choose not to become bitter. That was your choice. To rise, not rage, to be better, not broken. They thought they had beaten you. They thought your quiet meant emptiness, your patience meant fear, your grace meant weakness. But in that very silence, you were rebuilding, reflecting, processing, improving in ways they couldn't see, in ways they could never understand. And beneath the calm, beneath the steady behavior, was a determination they could never measure. You weren't stuck, you weren't powerless, you were preparing. You were letting their chaos expose itself while you quietly grew beyond their control. And it did. Now they see it. They see you succeeding, smiling without needing their approval, living without their presence, and it disturbs them. The version of you they believed they could manipulate no longer exists. You've outgrown their cage, stopped trying to justify your worth, stopped waiting for them to recognize what they could never see, and they are left with the consequences. Not because you punish them, but because life did. Life always exposes narcissists. Life always balances what they thought they could take for granted, and now they feel the pain of what they threw away. The realization that the person they tried to control, discard, and exploit was in truth the strongest, rarest presence in their lives. They thought you were fragile, but you were unbreakable. They thought you were replaceable, but now they understand they lost someone irreplaceable. And you didn't raise your voice. You didn't chase them. Your silence, your distance, your grace, all of it spoke louder than any confrontation ever could. You never wasted your strength on the wrong person. And now, finally, they see the truth. They can't undo what they lost. They can't reclaim what they destroyed, and they will never again find the depth, loyalty, and integrity you embodied. You weren't interested in playing their games. You showed up with your heart open. You gave them honesty when it was inconvenient. You gave them patience when they didn't deserve it. You gave them your best self, and they took it for granted. But this isn't just a regular loss for them. This is a profound loss for their soul. Because when a narcissist encounters someone who sees them in their worst moments and still chooses to stay, someone who offers loyalty without conditions, and they throw that person away, the weight of that decision doesn't disappear. It lingers. It sticks to their identity. It becomes a shadow they can't escape. A quiet voice that whispers in moments of loneliness, in moments of stillness, "I let the best go." At the time, they convinced themselves they were choosing something better, something easier, something more exciting or more convenient. But now, nothing measures up. Every connection feels shallow. Every new person feels fragile. Every distraction, every new beginning, every attempt to recreate what they had with you fails because once they experienced authenticity, everything fake feels empty. They search for your qualities in others. They chase faint signs of the person they lost. Maybe they pretend they've moved on, but deep down the comparison is always there. A quiet, annoying realization that nothing, no one can replace what they destroyed. They lost someone rare, someone real. You didn't just offer them love, you offered depth, understanding, stability. You accepted their chaos. You carried their pain without judging them. You believed in them when they couldn't believe in themselves, and they treated that like it was easily replaced. That is the cruelty of narcissists. They cannot recognize the value of genuine care until it's gone. Now they are haunted not only by what they did, but by what they'll never have again. And the tragedy is they didn't see it until it was too late. That's the price of crossing someone with integrity. The cost doesn't show in the moment. It shows years later in the quiet, in the emptiness, in the nagging realization that they burned the bridge to something irreplaceable. They remember your laugh. They remember your words. They remember the comfort of knowing someone had their back no matter what. And now they sit in silence, knowing they destroyed the very thing they claimed to value. Loyalty like yours doesn't come with conditions. And that's what made it powerful, but they couldn't see it at the time. Their ego, their immaturity, their short-sightedness blinded them. And now they are paying the price. Every day, with every failed connection, every empty distraction, every attempt to find approval from elsewhere, you didn't have to punish them. Life did. Life has a harsh way of teaching lessons that narcissists refuse to learn until it's too late. The moment they betrayed you, they separated themselves from the one person who saw the best in them, even when they were at their worst. No apology, no excuse, no rewriting of history can ever change that. You, on the other hand, carried the pain, but you also carried your integrity. You walked away not wanting revenge, but with dignity. And that is something they will never forget. Not because they miss what they had, but because they finally understand what they'll never get back, the connection, the safety, the honesty, the unwavering loyalty. That kind of bond doesn't happen easily. It's rare. And they threw it away. Now they are left with a void. They are the ones searching for signs of you in people who will never measure up. They're chasing ghosts, hoping to feel a fraction of what you once offered, and all they find is absence. They let go of something sacred. They destroyed something beautiful. And in doing so, they sentence themselves to a life where your absence is louder than any presence they try to fill it with. They lost you, and they will carry that loss forever. You, however, could have broken down. No one would have blamed you, but you didn't. You healed, you rose, you succeeded. And that is the final truth they can never escape. They thought they could control you, manipulate you, silence your power, but they were wrong. True strength isn't loud. It's the grace to endure, the courage to walk away, and the wisdom to protect your heart. You weren't broken by their games, you were strengthened. You didn't fight back, you rose. Every step you take, every success, every moment of peace reflects what they lost and can never reclaim. They live with absence and emptiness while you live with freedom, clarity, and dignity. You survived, you healed, you thrived,